Hi there, this is Gerald Lopez with the fourth session of Aikido Off the Mat. We are interviewing people who have used their Aikido experience and brought it out into the world in order to share with the rest of the world and to help people in different ways. So today we have someone who is very much a veteran in this field. He's been in the Aikido space for a very long time now. He was involved with some of the pioneers of Aikido in the United States, a retired lawyer, or I suppose they call attorneys over there. He has worked in defending holistic health practitioners and clarifying scopes and roles within the healthcare field. He is an author and musician and has run training in communication, collaborative decision-making, and conflict management. He has studied somatics and structural integration and brings a unique insight into the embodied aspect of ourselves. So let me introduce Jerry Green. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gerald. It's great to be here. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate what you're doing to bring Aikido applied to other human endeavors than in the dojo out to many people. I've seen your earlier films and look forward to watching this one.
Yes, so do I. I'm sure it's going to be a good one. So yeah, Jerry, you've done so much. So maybe we'll start from, maybe a good place to start is where you started Aikido. So can you tell us a little bit about, how you started Aikido, why you started Aikido, and what that experience was?
Sure. Aikido was for me an extension of my interest in studying my own health. From a somatic perspective. I was into massage, I was into rolfing, I was into yoga, Tai Chi, and I was running a massage center in Larkspur in the county of Marin in California, Northern California. And George Leonard came to do a story on this group of yoga practitioners who were doing massage at a place called Devta in Larkspur. This was in the mid-70s. And he interviewed me for an article he was doing, I think, for New Realities magazine. And then drove me home in his little MG and over windy roads. And he didn't waste any time starting to teach me Aikido. He says, feel your body weight and settle into this bucket seat as we go around the turns and feel connected to the earth. And we whizzed back to Mill Valley where he was taking me. I thought he was taking me home. He says, come to my house. He says, I have a few mats set up in the basement. I want to show you some Aikido. And he did. And we did some Aikido practice kind of stuff. And he said, we're starting a dojo and I hope you'll come by. Tamalpais Dojo in Mill Valley was started by George Leonard with Richard Heckler and Wendy Palmer, two of the students that joined George in studying with Bob Nadeau in San Francisco. And I grew up in corrective PE classes being chased by bullies. I had a congenital cerebral palsy that affected my left side. So I was an awkward kid, and I was just beginning to unwind my tension patterns with massage and rolfing and all the holistic studies that I was involved in at the time. I didn't really feel like getting on the mat with a lot of ex-bullies who've turned graceful martial artists. So I watched for a long time, and George watched me watch. And then he said, the first 30, 40 minutes of a class are just warm-up exercises. Come and be on the mat, and you can get off at that point if you want. Well, I started that way. And Wendy Palmer and Richard Heckler were both involved in somatic bodywork.
Mm.
And they taught with their interest in healing. So it wasn't really a martially oriented dojo, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And George is a wonderful educator as well. So I soon learned that I could be on the mat for a little while, and it was fascinating because I'd have to do something with my right side, and then with my left side, and then with my right side, and then with my left side again. And at the time, my exercise was playing tennis,
Mm-hmm.
which was very random, very one-sided.
Yes.
When I finally got hit in the eye with a tennis ball playing up on the net, I realized this isn't as healthy as Aikido for me. And I got serious about studying Aikido more. And I was fascinated because it did require overcoming a persona of a physically handicapped, awkward kid. Being in a dressing room and dressing down and dressing up in a uniform with a lot of guys who looked like they used to be bullies. And who saw it as a martial art. Well, Wendy and Richard, I knew both of them from my work in holistic studies. They were friends of Devta, of this massage center. So I hung in there, and I learned from all of them. I think I learned mostly from Wendy, because Wendy has this ability to teach how she learns.
Mm.
So while I was learning techniques in the way they should be done, mostly from George, he was good at that, and seeing it demonstrated gracefully like Richard Heckler does, Wendy would do a technique and she would say, I felt like I was a little bit pushy in my response to that grab. I'm going to do that again. And then she'd do it again with a little bit of less pushy or a little more generosity, some quality that she would notice she was either lacking or wanted more in her practice.
Yeah.
So by teaching in that manner, she enabled me to learn to study myself, not just to study the right way to do this technique from George. And it was a wonderful orientation. And I stayed in Aikido for 30 years.
Mm.
Until I moved up into Sonoma County, and I now live in Santa Rosa. I lived in Sebastopol for a while and trained here for a while with other people, and now am more working with my own. I'm 77. I really don't feel like flying through the air and doing high falls anymore. But Aikido has taught me how to swim differently. It taught me how to ski. I went from being in corrective PE classes, not being able to do anything, to being quite comfortable in my body, and became a dancer, been active in the dance community in this county. And now I swim every day. And I swim like I do Aikido.
Yes, and you mentioned in one of your writings how someone was watching you swimming and made a certain comment which you felt was quite telling. Tell us about that.
Well, a stranger was swimming in the lane next to me at Ives Pool, and when we got to the end of the pool, he turns to me and he says, "You swim like you do Aikido." And I look at him and I said, "Do I know you? Have we trained together before?" "No." "Are you an Aikidoist? Do you practice Aikido?" "No." I said, that's a very astute observation, because particularly in the last 6 months, I've been exploring what I've learned about moving from Aikido in the pool. How did you recognize that? And he said, "I read George Leonard's books." And I went, "Oh man, this guy can pay attention."
Yes. Yeah. So for you, that's interesting, because when you go on the Aikido forums on Facebook and whatever, people are always comparing notes about techniques, and they say, "Oh, you should have turned his hand a bit more that way," and "Oh, that guy's thing is whatever." but you are sort of, it seems to me that your experience was not so much about the techniques. I mean, obviously it was, but there was this other experience, inner experience of what was really happening with your body. Would you agree with that? It was an embodied experience.
Yeah, we're coming together around the idea of Aikido off the mat, and I'm coming to that subject probably
like jumping the gun a little bit, maybe.
well, no, I want to say that I'm coming to it from a place of the inner Aikido, which is in the schools that I taught. We learned from Saotome, and there are many different schools of practice and teaching in Aikido, and some of them are more introspective than others. But I mean, I grew up falling down, for example, as a spastic kid who used to get chased by bullies. And Aikido gave me an opportunity to make an art out of falling. And that was the greatest thing that I learned. I have had hundreds of remarkable experiences falling and not hurting myself. I fell out of a raised garden bed once into a box of shale when I pulled out a big Swiss chard plant and lost my balance, fell down a hill and into this box backward. Just enough room in the box for the shale and me going diagonally from head to toe. My head was below my feet. I came out of there without a scratch.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how I did it. I absolutely don't know how I did it. But I know that I learned to get comfortable taking falls in Aikido and rolling and even doing high falls. I had a flip once on skis without poles, landed on my upper back and heard 4 or 5 cracks, thought I cracked my spine.
Yeah.
I sat up taller than I was before. I could move from side to side. My torso, I have a bit of a kyphosis, a hunchback kind of posture. And my whole rib cage was bruised for 6 weeks because I bounced myself into a different shape.
Right. Yeah.
Really.
That's amazing.
And I've had falls in Aikido, high falls, where I've been stretched constructively in a healing way. So I would say that I am fascinated. I mean, our dojo really pioneered this idea of taking Aikido out of the dojo. And it came not just from George Leonard and Wendy and Richard. It really came, in my experience, came from Saotome. He would come and teach at Tamalpais Dojo, and when he came, all the black belts from the Bay Area would come, and the mat would be full of bullies. Right. And I would sit on the sideline. I was, just getting into this. And one day he said to the dojo that he was really proud of the way Aikido had been received in this country, and he had one exception. And he turns and he looks to the guys who are sitting on the bench by the door. And he says, there's not enough study of Aikido from off the mat. And I felt like he was talking to me.
Yeah.
I started saying, this is a good way, it's a good place to sit and watch. And I found that by watching and not training, I was learning something different.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe it was the first step to Aikido in the parking lot, and then Aikido on the street, and then Aikido out in the world.
Yeah.
So that was the tradition of the dojo that I grew out of. And then of course, 2000 was when I began to back away from being a lawyer and retire, and got interested in mediation and conflict resolution, and began to get curious about nonviolent communication. Met Rachel Rosenberg.
Yep.
And a handful of Aikido people had studied nonviolent communication, and we made an attempt in 2008 to pull NBC people into an Aikido conference on the East Coast. And they wouldn't come. And I told Marshall Rosenberg about it. I said, Marshall, your work has to do with learning the difference between judgments in the head, feelings in my empathic center in my heart, and unmet needs, which he says you have to kind of intuit. I said, what the Aikido people have learned from Aikido is that the embodied awareness, the somatic sense of self, helps us to speak about our feelings by first locating our attention in our heart. And NVC was often taught by lists of words that are empathic, feeling words, but you learn them as a language skill. You learn them up in your head. And they're often misapplied in conflict situations, often in conflict situations, because in conflict, under pressure, things get riled up. Energy and attention goes up, not down. Unmet needs that ultimately will bring agreement into people who are in conflict with one another are actually deeper than the emotional intelligence that's in the heart, and certainly beneath the self-righteous intellectual smartness that's in the head. I don't know how you really access intuition in the sense, other than to empty out the busyness of the mind and the busyness of the emotions. So I'm learning that, and of course we study this in Aikido. Aikido ultimately comes from being in your center and open to what you don't know, open to what's new and discoverable, perhaps by intuition, perhaps by imagination, perhaps just by being fascinated with not knowing and encountering a force that looks like it's coming to get me, and somehow I can blend with it. I can become a wave. A wave is really two bodies of water coming at each other. And it forms a wave, right? And that quality is not known up here. And it's really not known emotionally. And in this world, we're learning about separating heartfelt feelings from heady judgments. But as Wendy Palmer first pointed out in The Intuitive Body, her first book, that the split between the heart and the hara, the belly, the still point, the quiet place in me where intuition can incline me. I think of the intelligence, the wisdom of my hara as inclination. If I let go, which way do I lean?
Right.
I lean from my center. I don't lean from my head.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I suppose martial arts is quite unique in that traditionally it was an art of how to access your best performing self while under extreme pressure, like someone trying to slice you in half or something like that. And so, as you say, we often learn, okay, well, if you want to deal with conflict, well, you follow this list of things and whatever. But when you're actually under pressure, all those lists and things just go out of the window. So martial arts, it seems to me that what you discovered was that martial arts gives you an extra ability to actually be in a resourceful state, even under possibly extreme pressure or more pressure than normal. So do you think that is what Aikido or what we are doing has to offer in the world of business or relationships or whatever?
I see it as shifting my attention from dealing with the pressure initially of a Jewish mother and raised in a family of not being good enough and being judged, to ultimately going to law school and learning how to argue confront people who are after me or after my client, to being more interested in my relationship with the earth than the attacker, even if the attacker is a litigant.
Yes.
How do I find a place in myself where I can stay vertical, stay balanced, stay relaxed, continue to breathe? My brain actually works better when my attention is in my belly. Right? And then my practice on the mat became, oh, somebody's grabbing me, somebody's pushing me, somebody's attacking me. There's three of us. The planet is way bigger than both of us. If I stay connected with the planet and move in relationship to the planet, but I'm open to receiving a connection with this person who's my training partner, who's acting as though they're trying to knock me over, tie me up, injure me, I can bring him or her into that relationship with the planet. And ultimately, that's what leads to a blend and a role or safety for both the attacked and the attacker.
Yeah.
And that was taught as the health practice in my dojo.
Yes. Yes. So in the end, there's something in there in that exercise of dealing with attack, and that is somehow we can extend that and say, well, there's something healing about that. Can you say something about, what is that healing aspect of it?
Well, I think the healing aspect begins, I think it begins also inside the body. It begins with my shifting my attention from my fears or whatever's in the emotional center, or my judgments, my heady stuff, to the whole of me, to the center of me, into my belly. And then I have options. I can say what my head wants. I can say what my heart feels. And I can also say what I imagine that I'm not so sure about. I can speak from this quieter place where, if nothing else, I feel myself in the center of my chair. I'm not worried about sliding off onto the floor.
Yeah.
Whether it's through illness or being attacked. And I have actually gotten quite active in men's work through the Mankind Project, and seen how powerful this, shall we say, spreading of attention from the narrow focus, if I'm impassioned with something in my heart, or the even narrower focus where everything is this or that, good or bad, right or wrong, to an embodied place where, under pressure, my ability to be introspective about my own shadows, the things that I'm not conscious of, that govern my behavior and make me reactive to a loved one or a significant other or somebody on the street. If I can find my center under that kind of pressure and still stay connected, my communication can be about that connection. Yes. So from my center, I could say, I feel you. I feel connected in this. I'm even though I disagree with you about who's right or who's wrong in this dispute, or even though if it saddens me or frightens me that you want my money or my car, or you want to take my wife or whatever, I can sit and listen. One of the first elements that I've really expanded a great deal of in doing men's work is the ability to listen compassionately. And that's the ability to hear you, hear my own thoughts and my heartfelt feelings.
Yes.
And also imagine where you're coming from. Or imagine how I'm receiving what this is. This is a very receptive place, the belly.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
So it's a safe place to go, and it's really the place that from which we have to be present in order to carry the principles of Aikido out of the dojo and into the world. And I found that happened quite unintentionally. I mean, I was actually promoting my mediation practice and speaking in a bookstore in Sonoma County one day when I realized that people learned more about my sense of embodiment, what I would call my somatic attunement, than they learned about my strategy as a lawyer or as a mediator. Yeah. And I was asked to go to a church and lead a church group on that, which was really surprising to me because it came from Aikido and I wasn't intending to be an Aikido teacher. So the teaching that ultimately ended up as this 10-lesson course that's now at Aikido University called Tuning into the Body really came to me in response to people who were asking questions of me. Can you help me figure out what to do with my conflict with my teenager? Yeah. And my response wasn't to really jump into the weeds with them on the issue. My response was to wonder how close they were to their center. And can I help them find that place where, in their bodies, in their awareness, from which they can hear what's in their head, feel what's in their heart, and know that they're safe and that they're loved even by their teenager who's angry at them. Yeah. Well,
that's beautifully demonstrated in a video that you created, where you've got this person, you're working with this person who's got an issue with his boss who comes criticizing him, and I suppose if I recall correctly, he's a person who kind of withdraws a little bit or freezes a little bit, and he doesn't know what to say, and he gets in a fluster and all that. And what you did quite very quickly, instantly, in fact, was to help him come into a particular state where he felt centered, and then you simulated the boss's attack again, and the guy came out with some phrases that were very much creative and that were very appropriate to the situation, and if it was the real boss, would have diffused the situation. So the only change was he didn't learn any lists of things, he didn't learn any smart theories, you just showed him a particular state. So that's pretty awesome, eh?
Thank you. That's the way I learned it. And in men's work, the uke is the shadow. It's that predisposed desire to fight back against my mother that gets in my way when I get triggered by somebody's behavior. And we've got very sophisticated processes in the Mankind Project for clearing charges and getting down into that, but it usually comes through inquiry, but it's also aimed at the embodied awareness of it. You've got a feeling that's driving you that doesn't seem to be related here. Maybe it comes from your dad. Where do you feel it in your body? That's still a heady question. Yeah. If I can put a little pressure on you and help you feel where you have to be in your body to handle that pressure without pushing back or caving in or getting rigid. Those are the three responses that we have to pressure in Aikido. Yeah. Then actually your thinking about it is reflective of that centered attention. Yes. And that's what people who study the verbal skills of nonviolent communication have difficulty with, because under pressure, it doesn't work. Under pressure, my attention's going to go up into my head. Yeah. And I'm going to think about what to say on the list of feelings if I want to be empathic. Well, that's not as sincere as really feeling something here.
Yes. Yeah. So I think you said somewhere in another piece that you wrote that disembodiment is one of our biggest problems. You still think that?
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for asking that. I'm really beginning to appreciate something that I've overlooked for many years. Most people, the mind is a very jealous controller. It's the issue of, can I learn from my body? Can my mind be willing to let go of control in order to learn from my body? And until the mind sees the benefit of that, the mind is going to be at odds with that. And I had to learn to recognize that if someone wants to make it okay to learn from their feeling side, before they do that, we have to work with that mental step before we can say, I'm going to go swimming and I'm going to wonder what's new about how I swim today, or what's new about how I sound at the piano today, rather than think, what am I practicing? Okay. So what I'm realizing is that the mind is going to be in control.
Yeah.
Until it learns that there's something to be gained by studying body wisdom. All right. The idea of the course being called tuning into the body is a struggle for most people, because you don't really tune into the body until it's really safe, I think, for the mind.
Yeah.
Okay. And if the mind is at risk of losing something that it needs, which is understanding, my mind wants to understand and it wants to control. If I surrender to some other sense, shall I say, some other source of wisdom, it's a little frightening. It's a little frightening. So that's why actually valuing feeling, I'm sitting on a chair that, even though it has wheels, I'm in the center of it, and I'm in the center of my body and I feel comfortable, or I'm on skis or I'm in water and I can still feel my center. Yeah. All right. That's very powerful. Sure. It's a much higher value in the East than it is in the West. We have to learn that, because we have to satisfy the mind's desire to do it right, or be right, or get it right before it's okay. So that's a scary thing. And I'm more patient with people who are struggling with that than I used to be. Yeah.
You mentioned, you said something, I think, which is quite significant. You were saying, talking about being safe in the body. And one of the things that I also used to do massage and yoga, and so work with people a lot in terms of their energetics and their body. And one thing I've felt is that a lot of people, especially women, especially young women, I think when they get older, give birth, it's kind of grounds them. But women pre-giving birth, a lot of them feel kind of unsafe in their body. I feel that a lot of people, maybe because of religion, they kind of disregard the lower part of the body. The belly. It's down there somewhere. I don't really want to know about it, and I don't talk about it, and I just cover it up every morning. So there's a kind of a funny relationship around that part of the body. What would you say? How could someone, build some safety and friendship with that area in order to be?
I think you said that very well for women. I think the first step is to feel the fear. When I feel fear or pain, I want to feel it as a contraction. I'm kind of holding on to something.
Yeah.
If I could feel pain as tension, and let go of the tension, which I can do by breathing into it, by feeling its weight, right? It takes muscles, tension to hold my arm up. If I can feel the weight of my arm, I can feel the direction in which I have to open in order to release that tension, and my arm falls into gravity. Mm-hmm. All right. So the first step is, as you pointed out for women, thank you, I'll point it out for men. Men don't feel safe expressing their feelings. We were not raised to be sensitive emotionally. So it's an unknown territory for us. I have to first feel that as tension and breathe into it. Oh, I don't even know what I feel because I'm constricted in my throat, in my shoulders. Well, can I feel the restriction and breathe into it, open up, and now I realize, oh, yeah, now I could feel the sadness or the pain that's there or the fear that's there. But I can't feel it when I'm, the whole idea of contracting it is so that I can just think my way out of it up here.
Yeah, right. Yes.
So between the two of us, we've just said for men and women, the first step is awareness. All right. The second step I would think is to breathe. Gives the mind a little space. And the next step is to feel the weight. That's big for me. Somatic attunement is about feeling weight.
Right.
If I'm contracted as a crippled little kid and holding myself up, I'm afraid to let go. I'm afraid to let my spine support me. In order for my spine to support me, I have to feel that my pelvis, my belly, if I'm sitting in this chair, this works obviously standing too, is underneath me. If I'm frightened, it's not. Yeah. So come to a place where, here, it's easier to breathe. It's also quieter. This is full of a lot of emotion, worry, fear, and thoughts. What's the problem? How do I get this guy out of my face? Where do I go? Strategizing happens up here. No, it actually happens up there better if I can first get comfortable in my body, be in my center, be in my torso. I can breathe. I let my shoulders move, and realize that this fear, this source of unsafe feelings, is something I'm probably better off connecting with than trying to push away. Especially if it's coming from someone who's in my life and it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And from that place, I can say, okay, how can I detach even from my own self-righteousness? That's what's up here. Or I can be emotionally self-righteous, So let go of that a little bit and say, okay, I have fear here, but from a place of connection, I'd like to think that if we saw each other and felt each other and heard each other, we could resolve this.
Yeah.
And that creates space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's also about creating space.
Yeah, a possibility, a potential.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's trusting that, and I do believe this about the idea of somatics. Let me say something about somatics. The field of somatics is a science that comes out of turning my five senses by which I perceive the outside world, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, all of that, turning it inwardly and discovering where I am. My somatic state is felt. It's not learned. It's not something I can read about. I can read about learning it, and Feldenkrais and Thomas Hanna, a lot of somatic work, and applied Aikido is basically somatic work. Now, the fear is, can I can I trust that that grows from day to day according to its own dynamics, and they're not logical.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not going to, it's not, you don't have to worry about that. You can think about what happened. I swam differently today than I did yesterday, but I didn't know about it until I experienced it.
Mm.
I played this piece of music differently than I did yesterday, but I trusted that being there and being in this open, spacious inquiry and being in my center would get me closer to that than trying to figure it out and practice it.
Yeah.
All right. So applied Aikido doesn't really have to be learned and practiced. You can discover it in an instant.
Mm.
Like in the video that you saw, where this man with my help found his center. And from that place, he honestly had a different relationship with the pressure that his boss was putting on him.
Mm.
And he had a different relationship with his body. And it didn't come from figuring it out.
Yeah.
I didn't figure it out, and he didn't figure it out. He went to a more centered place.
Mm.
That's taking Aikido. The basic elements of Aikido around which this 10-lesson course are built are ground and center. That's find my belly, find my still point in my body, connect it to the earth, because the earth really wants me. The earth is huge. If I can use the power of the earth and my body weight, even in response to somebody's thought, I'm not alone. And then the third element is extension. Can I extend myself? Can I be generous from my center and reach out to this person and just be present? That's the first step. Be present. Be in a place of grace.
Yeah. And
Aikido happens. And Aikido, why does Aikido happen? That's the way of the universe. Aiki means I means blend. It's a symbol. It just basically looks like two waves coming together. It's a upside down V. Ki is life force. It's spirit. You see ki blending all over.
Mm.
Trees move in the breeze. That's Aikido. Right? So we learn that. We don't learn that by a series of words in a line. We learn that by, I can feel like a willow tree.
Mm.
Just go be by a willow tree. You can learn Aikido from a willow tree.
Exactly. It's like, in the old Chinese stories, they talk about the bamboo, look at the bamboo. It's kind of flexible, but when the strong wind blows, it's the oak tree that fell over, but the bamboo,
There it is.
And I think I think what you are saying is really profound and really important today, coming into this period where this COVID-19 scenario is taking place, and where people are probably, for some people, probably for the first time, realizing how fearful they are, how uncertain they feel, how ungrounded, and they feel like, what's going to happen next? What am I going to do? And the narrative around that is very intellectual solutions. So do you think that what we have here is actually a really more profound solution, or something that can help people out there if we can get it off the mat?
As a health practice, you're saying? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in this context, it's interesting to think about fighting a disease like you would fight a war with an army. You're going to go out and kill the disease, okay?
Eliminate it.
As opposed to how do I withstand, survive this onslaught? A wave comes at me, and I don't have an army or a wall to get behind, but I can organize myself in such a way that I can cut through the wave. And my own resources can keep me from drowning. Okay, sure, there are viruses, there are tornadoes, there are forest fires. The universe may explode, our sun will explode at some day, and where will we be then? We could be in a place of saying, how do I ride this wave?
Mm.
How can I blend? How can I use my resources? How can I align myself so that this disease or this challenge doesn't undo me? So it's an inner practice. Applied Aikido is an inner practice. I kind of backed into applied Aikido, frankly. I think I took the lessons in, and then I went out in the world and I discovered they were in me.
Mm.
And I was curious when I was doing legal work and mediation and studying Aikido, how do I take this into my mediation work? And while I was wondering how to do that, I would discover that I slowed people down by my presence. I asked questions that brought them into a place of greater self-reflection. I calmed the tension without intending it. And I realized I did that because I knew how to learn from my body. It took me half my life to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up thinking the body's an awkward place.
Yeah.
So I would compensate by being up here and getting really smart or getting funny. And I was in my late 30s before I discovered Gestalt and massage, and that I had a wisdom, I had an intelligence below my neck.
Mm.
I knew about my feelings. Oh, I feel okay, fine, you know, like most other guys, or I know when it's too hot or too cold. But if I can take a breath and feel how my breath feels in my chest, where I might feel some fear, then my statement of that is sincere. And if I can do that, I can feel what's in your chest. I can listen to the tone of your voice instead of the linear line of thought. And I can say, wow, it sounds like you're sad. Oh, you picked up on something I wasn't intending to reveal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I applied Aikido begins with and ends with this ability to be empathic. There's two kinds of empathy. There's I can feel you, and then there's like, can I feel me?
Right, right.
And frankly, I think I have to be able to feel me before I can feel you.
Yeah, we live in a world where, you know, in order to be better, to perform better, you know, the performance is a cult, it's an ideal. And the way people want to learn to perform better is to learn something, learn extra stuff, to, you know, practice extra stuff, to do some rituals or some routines or habits or whatever it is.
Learn to do it right.
Yeah. Well, of course. And then here you come in and say, hey guys, what I'm trying to say is I think it's really important for an older person like you and to take the place of an elder and say, hey guys, it's actually all right to be yourself, because that's where your power and your wisdom is. I think what you're taking on is actually a very traditional role, and this is why you call this, you know, you're an elder in this particular group, the role of the elder, where the elder has been through life and they come back and say, look, you don't have to try so hard. All you have to do is become more aware of yourself, and it's all there in your center. Do you feel that, and do you think that that's a really important thing, you know, that
Yeah, I wouldn't just say be aware of yourself, because being aware of myself, if I'm scatterbrained, I'm going to be aware of my scatterbrain, or if I'm emotionally unbalanced, I'm going to be aware of that. The talent, the skill that I practice and the skill that we study in the mat is in the midst of chaos.
Yes.
Can I be quiet? Can I be still? Can I be stable?
Yeah.
So it's how we organize the inner resources. And in Aikido, we have 3 centers of body wisdom. I mean, the head is not only intelligent, it weighs about 13 pounds. And it's helpful if we don't have to carry it.
Yes.
Or hold it up. And the torso is even heavier. And if we can settle down to where I can feel as much behind me as in front of me, I'm not worried that this process of interview is going to knock me over. I still have my connection with self, connection with planet, and you know what? That's how we're connected. Gravity's got the same interest in you, the same gravity as it does in me. And I like to think about the men in Madagascar, off the east coast of Africa. That's about the opposite side of the center of the planet. There are guys there who are just as confused about what to do as people who live nearby me. And we are connected. The earth is connecting us. So I think being comfortable living on the environment of the planet, in the environment and the planet, being part of that. My course begins with an introduction by Richard Heckler, one of my teachers, called The Mission of Somatics. And he says the reason we're not in touch with the planet and the needs of the planet is because we're not in touch with our bodies. Okay? The most powerful impact in our bodies is not the water we drink and the food that we eat and the things that we look at. It's gravity. Right? Every time we roll out of bed, if we get on our feet, it's because we've paid attention to gravity. The earth is paying attention to us all the time. So I think it holds, and I think it holds the key to the somatic attunement that we're looking for in applied Aikido, because it's underneath our emotional body wisdom and our intellectual body wisdom. And the challenge is, can I integrate that? I can't integrate it unless I could feel it separately. And unless I'm willing to say, oh, you know what, my inclination, which way am I leaning, is just as important as where my passions take me. And it's also as important as what I think I need to do to be right.
Well, and where your passion has taken you is in being, you kind of a little bit maybe avoided my complimenting you earlier. Your passion has taken you to being an elder and a really important person in society. And so going from that, what are you doing, or what do you plan to do as an elder, as what you're doing now? What projects have you got on the go? You talked about that one, the Aikido University one. So tell us how to get onto that if people are interested, and what else do you have in the pipeline? What are you doing as a projects?
Well, first of all, thank you for appreciating me. I really feel seen and heard by you, which is my return of the compliment. Maybe smart minds run on the same channel. I don't know, but all right. So I just completed putting together what I know about applying Aikido principles into a 10-lesson course that has an introduction by Wendy Palmer on conscious embodiment. It has an afterword by George Leonard on Aikido walking that anybody can take into a walk. And it has basic lessons that give people the opportunity to incorporate these basic elements of ground and center and extension with the language of compassion, and cooperation and collaboration rather than opposition. In my role as an elder in the Northern California area of the Mankind Project, I am leading circles of men that begin with checking in with one another by saying what's on my mind and what's in my heart, and being in my center and saying, what don't I know about that? What can I imagine? What can I intuit? And I have been for the last 2 years co-lead elder for the Elder Council. We've grown from 2 co-leaders to 7 members who represent different segments of special interests in the Mankind Project, which is an association of close to 100,000 men all over the country, of men who work on their shadows and find the light in their darkness. And I'm helping men's groups, they're called integration groups or I groups, cultivate elder energy, which is the ability to listen compassionately, which involves being in the body, the ability to protect the safety of a container, to bring the spiritual energy into the work, and the ability to recognize how to dig into shadow, dig into our unconscious darkness, attitudes that keep us from our potential, to find the light. These are all elder functions. And the elders in the Mankind Project are growing, and I think the significance of elders in our community are growing, and I guess I'm part of that. So thank you for seeing that. And you can find out about Mankind Project by going to mankindproject.org or NorCal Mankind Project.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any last words before we wrap up, Jerry?
Okay, last words. With all that we've said about Aikido, I want to encourage our listeners to acknowledge that how they grow somatically, that become somatically attuned to your own body, is to open the door to something that's unique. We are all unique. Your way of learning is different than mine and different than others, but there are principles that we've learned from Aikido that can, in fact, harmonize the world. That's what O-sensei said. And it's interesting that it's come into the world as a martial art. It came into the world of conflict. And this teaching of unifying the world comes through martial art. Well, it certainly can't influence the world until it gets out of the dojo. And now with COVID, we're facing the challenges of how do I learn Aikido without going to the dojo? Well, if a man can get in a pool with me and say he can see what he read in a book, I can't even imagine what people are going to learn just by discovering this video and other videos that you put out about people taking Aikido off the mat. It's an awesome task that we're involved in, and it's delightful to be part of that flow. So I'm really appreciating you and what you're doing to put this in a media that people can get it. And we're working for O-sensei. He wanted to reconcile the world. He can't do that with dojos. He can train bullies to be kinder and safer to one another. And maybe train some spastic kids to get up and move around gracefully and fall. Make an art out of falling. But until that gets out of the dojos, so I can imagine someday people are going to learn Aikido like they learn Zen philosophy or take a course somewhere. And yeah, there'll be videos, people will, oh yeah, I can see what he's doing. Let's translate that into, and all the Aikido teachers that I see are looking at the same experience of watching a sensei with no words, or watching Saotome with no words, and saying, here's what I see in that. Often it's what I need to learn, because we tend to teach what we need to learn.
Yeah.
But as we learn it, and we can share it. And for your listeners or observers, your way of learning from your body with the principles of Aikido, with ground and center and extension or connection, that opens up to an intuitive way of relating, will be unique. But we'll be practicing the same thing. We'll be practicing it together. And when we meet on the street someday, we'll say, namaste, I love you. I see God in you. Not, am I worried that you're going to give me a disease or you're going to hit me and take my money? Not that I have much left.
Well, Jerry, that's been a really fascinating experience with you. Thank you so much for sharing that richness of your learnings, your wisdom, and your teaching. It's been an honor to have you, and I hope that we can continue sharing our experiences and out into the world. So all the best with your projects, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Well, thank you very much, Gerald. It's great to be in touch with New Zealand. It's amazing. You're almost as far away as Madagascar.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Have a great week.
See you then, Jerry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.